I'm Shahar Azani, and welcome to this JBS special, Eye on Israel, from Israel. I have the pleasure of being today with Dr. Mordechai Kedar, a renowned Israeli scholar of Arab culture, a former lecturer at Bar-Ilan University, and currently a researcher at the Begin-Sadat Center for Strategic Studies. Dr. Kedar, it's a pleasure to be here with you.
My pleasure and my honor, Shahar.
I want to take advantage of spending precious time with you to dive into what's happening currently, days ahead on the eve of US President Biden's visit to the region. What are your expectations and how do you frame this visit?
Well, in my daily phone call with President Biden, he didn't tell me. What I read in the papers. I try to understand what happens in the papers, but apparently Biden wants to give his input to the Middle East after Trump gave his input in the Abraham Accords,
right,
which are actually written on his name. Biden wants also to contribute, especially towards the elections of the midterm. As much as I read, he wants to bring something significant with Saudi Arabia, which didn't join the Emirates and Bahrain and Morocco in the former phase of the Abraham Accords 3 years ago almost. Apparently, this is what he wants, that Saudis will join the Abraham Accords with Israel. We have all kinds of signs that this is what he wants. And even from Saudi Arabia, we saw a very interesting gesture when only 2 days ago, the khatib, means the preacher of the Arafah day in the Hajj, was nominated a guy who definitely is for relations with the Israelis. He visited Auschwitz. There are pictures of him hugging a rabbi, not Israeli, but still a rabbi. And he is talking about peace and the obligation to look for peace, which sounds to Islamic ears as somebody who is on his way to normalize the relations with Israel.
But just so that we understand, this is a governmental appointee.
Definitely. Everything which connected to the Hajj is by the government. There is a whole ministry in Saudi Arabia which takes care of the Hajj. And of course, the fact that he was nominated to give the main sermon of the Hajj, it was definitely by the Mohammed bin Salman, means the crown prince. So these gestures, in addition to all kinds of other things like permission of Saudi Arabia to Israeli planes to fly over Saudi Arabia on their way to the Emirates and to Bahrain. All kinds of these gestures definitely show that Saudi Arabia is walking towards Israel, maybe not fast enough, but definitely tries to find ways how to have better relations with Israel without making the Iranians too angry. And here comes America into the play. If the American administration gives the impression that they are in bed with the Iranian regime, this will give the Iranians the feeling that they can do whatever they like and do all kinds of nasty things to Saudi Arabia if they go forward with Israel. Just to remind you what happened in the mid-September 2019, almost 3 years ago, when the Iranians, during one night, destroyed, devastated some very important facilities of Aramco in Saudi Arabia. And they actually paralyzed the ability of Saudi Arabia to export oil for like 2 or 3 months, which for Saudi Arabia was a big, big hit to their economy. And nobody retaliated. Yeah. President Trump didn't do anything, others didn't do it. And the Saudis didn't do anything against Iran, although everybody knew who did it.
Behind it.
Who did it. And some of those drones which carried out this attack on Saudi Arabia actually were launched from Iran, not even from Iraq or Yemen. It was definitely from Iran, and nobody retaliated. So, but the Saudis actually remember this very well, and they will not go to anything with Israel if they do not feel that the Americans support it. Means that Americans will deter the Iranians from hitting Saudi Arabia because Saudi Arabia goes with Israel.
So they need to see that kind of firm commitment from the Americans.
Yes, they need the green light from America, which means a red light to the Iranians. Only if the Saudis are convinced that Biden will give them this permission to go to Israel with him as a guardian of the Saudis from the Iranian side, this might convince the Saudis the time
to take that step.
Time to take that step towards Israel. But Biden will have to work very hard in order to convince them, because they are not willing to sacrifice their economy on the altar of their relations with Israel.
And how do you see the potential agreement between the superpowers and Iran over the nuclear issue as part of that equation?
Look, as much as I read in the media, Iran is already on the threshold of producing enough uranium of 90% of enrichment. And this is a bomb.
Right.
So maybe they will give this surprise to Biden. Hey, guy, we are nuclear. He sits with the Saudis and they will run. I don't know, I'm not a prophet, and they didn't tell me what their intentions are, but if they see Biden too much with the Saudis, they might tell, okay, you are with them, okay, now we are nuclear.
You're mentioning the Iranian issue, and that really takes me to the elections that are about to take place in Israel in a few months. And there has been a lot of Iranian chatter in the Israeli political system. Iran's name has come up many a time. Former Prime Minister Bennett mentioned Iran. Lapid mentions Iran. Of course, former Prime Minister Netanyahu. How do you see that playing in incentivizing the Iranians to show their force in the region?
Well, I don't think that it has any political ramifications, because everybody is afraid of them, the right and left together. And both, right, this is a matter of existence, so there is no real dispute between right and left in Israel. There are all kinds of ideas, whether the JCPOA is good or not good, but it's not a matter of politics. The Iranian issue is taken very seriously, but all the Israelis, I think Arabs as well, as something which threatens the mere existence of the state of Israel. And in this thing, there is no disputes and no quarrels. There are all kinds of ideas, whether it was good that Netanyahu went to the Congress against Obama's will or not. There are all kinds of voices which call upon the government to attack Iran before they become nuclear in order to prevent it, with a big question: will they be able to prevent it? Even if Israel hits some facilities, because don't forget that the Iranian real facilities are under the ground.
Very deep.
And under the ground, you don't bomb, because the bombs will be wasted. You have to send a group of soldiers to the area of the target. They should go to the target, fight into the target, fight inside the target, in order to blow the target from within. This is what has to be done in order to get rid of this nuclear program. But for this, you have to know exactly where all the facilities are and be able to run there and to do whatever you think should be done.
Yeah, Dr. Kedar, you're talking about the agreement, the understanding between right and left that Iran is a threat to Israel, an existential threat to Israel. We know the ideologies of the regime. So what is the Israeli elections all about? What is the main issue?
Well, it's actually about Netanyahu. Yes, Bibi, no Bibi. This is the slogan. And actually the last years, or the last government, which lasted for a year, definitely this was a government which succeeded to survive only because Netanyahu is still the head of the Likud. So all of the components of the former government were those parties and people who are afraid of Netanyahu, who don't want him. And this is the only common denominator which these people had. And this is why it could work maybe for a temporary thing, a temporary time or temporary phase. But the time is over. And now let's hope that the next election will come out with a steady government afterwards.
Right. Do you see the Palestinian issue as an issue in those elections?
Behind the scenes. Because don't forget that so far, Baruch Hashem, let's hope that this will continue. So far, the terror against Israel is inside the Green Line are minor. Of course, there are attempts to hit Israelis, and some of them unfortunately succeeded. But in general, we don't have these wide-scale demonstrations as there were in the first Intifada, or wide-scale terror attacks as characterized the second Intifada.
But yet we've seen, even within the framework of this anti-Netanyahu coalition, that Prime Minister Lapid called Mahmoud Abbas. Bennett prided himself at not engaging. Defense Minister Benny Gantz has continuously met with the head of the Palestinian Authority. So how do you see that in the context of...
Well, unfortunately, these people have a very clear agenda to work against Israel, because when you empower the PA, or the Fatah actually, because the PA belongs to Fatah, if you empower Fatah, you actually act very tremendously against peace and against prosperity. Because once they feel that they can do whatever they like, they will come to do whatever they like.
And when you say whatever they like, what do you have in mind?
Whatever you are afraid of. Because, look, the Israeli political arena actually legitimized during the last year the Islamic movement. And the Islamic movement is actually the Ikhwani movement, which sees no reason for the mere existence of the state. Because according to Islam, Jews have no right to a state or any other manifestation of sovereignty. Jews, if they all have, is a right to live under the yoke of Islam, under the orders of Islam, and under the rules of Islam. Means a Jewish girl of 13 years old cannot go to the street without hair cover, because the Muslim girls have to have a head cover as of they are 12. So what I'm saying is that the last elections, which were over a year ago, actually came out with this government, which is now finishing its time, and legitimized the Islamic movement. And this is a very bad thing, because the Islamic movement should remain out of every decision-making circle.
And how do you see, we were talking about Netanyahu, how do you see Netanyahu's role in this equation as being the one who opened the door for the Islamic movement? Do you agree with that?
This is what people say. Yet, what he spoke with the Islamic movement only about one law, to gain their support to one law which he wanted to pass in the Knesset. And the recent government, what they did is they didn't ask Mansour Abbas only to support a law in the Knesset. They brought him into the government. They gave him budgets which he didn't even dream about, 50 or something billion shkalim. Well, you can ask what they are, but since they gave him a very, very important support. So, altogether, if we have to sum, these elections are actually about yes, Netanyahu or not Netanyahu.
And do you expect U.S. President Biden to meet with Netanyahu, or...
I have no idea about his schedule, because he knows that every meeting today will have ramifications on the elections. And I'm not sure that he wants to interfere.
And do you expect the Israeli government to provide any kind of, let's say, compensation or a gift to the US president in the form of some sort of gestures towards the Palestinians? Freezing of building?
I have no idea what they are preparing, and in my humble view, they shouldn't prepare anything. They should hear what he wants to say. Let him say, and with the time we'll forget it.
With the U.S. president's Biden is challenged right now in the coming into the midterms. There is a great challenge. We know the lack of support that the Biden administration now has within the U.S. So, in your opinion, there is no need by the Israeli government to provide any gestures to the Americans when it comes to settlements, when it comes to Jerusalem?
No, because the world got used to the fact that Israel give gestures without any return. I think this is a habit, very, very bad habit. Everybody should look at Israel as a firm country, as a country with strength, and Israel doesn't have to crawl and lick other people's feet.
Right. And what would you say would be a successful outcome for the visit?
I really don't know, because I'm afraid that Prime Minister Lapid will take this opportunity in order to promote the establishing of a Palestinian state, in order to look nice in the eyes of Biden. I think that establishing a Palestinian state these days will be a disaster for them and for us. And I really have no expectations. And even if there are nice, speeches and documents, at the end of the day, we have to implement them, and implementation will not be easy.
And one of the things I'm really eager to speak to you about, and our viewers will have this opportunity, is to actually dive a bit deeper into what's happening in the Palestinian Authority, what's going on in the Judea and Samaria and in the Gaza Strip, and maybe take a moment to look at Turkey, take a moment to look at Saudi Arabia, and maybe talk about the Islamic movement. So that we will keep for another episode. And in the meantime, I thank all of our viewers for watching this JBS special Eye on Israel from Israel with Dr. Mordechai Kedar, and we will see you soon again as we cast an eye on Israel. Shalom from the beautiful state of Israel.
We would be pleased to send a complimentary DVD of this program to anyone who wishes to support JBS with a tax-deductible gift of $36, double high or more. Simply visit the JBS website at jbstv.org and click on the donate button to make a donation by PayPal or your credit card. And please indicate the program for which you would like a DVD. Or you can send your tax-deductible check to JBS, Post Office Box 360, Stamford, Connecticut 06904. Or you can call the JBS Pledge Line at 833-MY-JBS-TV. That's 833-695-2788. And again, please remember to indicate which program you would like to receive with our compliments. We thank you for your kind support.